Hi there. The Church of Nowhere and Moral Platitudes. On the left here, there's a list of what a cynical person could call a load of moral platitudes and home psychology and old mothers' wise tales, sayings, which you could take issue with and also take quite a bit of umbrage with as well. Because when you look at this list, and we'll go through it in detail in a minute, and compare it to the world actually as it is, with the Indian sweatshops and the slaughterhouses and the global warming and the abuse of women and children, and there's a whole list of things that are bad about the world and are screwed up about the world and about ourselves and our relationship to nature in particular. And it's true that, in a way, as Agent Smith says in The Matrix, that the human race is like a virus, and it's just literally sucking the life blood, the life vitality force out of this earth and out of all the creatures that live on this earth, as human beings pursue an agenda of total and utter selfishness. And yet, also, a cynical person would say that, in the face of such selfishness, in the face of such greed and destructiveness on the part of the human race, fills its middle class existence with a lot of platitudes, which basically do nothing to change the world. And this is the first one here: is that the universe is unfolding as it should. And which, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Tell that to the people, the children living working in the sweatshops of India and of China, making your Apple iPad and all that. It isn't unfolding as it should for them. Or if it is, then you have to invent some kind of metaphysics, theology about karma and about reincarnation, and all the people that are suffering are there because they caused suffering in the past, although actually that isn't actually what karma says. But everybody is having the life that is due to them, let us say. So that's the first sort of platitude, and the other one is that ultimately the universe is just the play of energy. And this is an interesting one because, empirically we might say that this is actually a true statement. And therefore, moral ontology doesn't exist. In other words, the things that we see, the people that we see, the animals that we see around us, it doesn't matter how they're treated because they're just packets of energy. And the things that we do and the things that are done to us are just the play of energy and the flow of energy from one object to another object, if there are any objects in the universe anyway, which is disputable. And so therefore, it doesn't really matter what you do. And this surely is the is the sort of mantra that serial killers have, for example, that they objectifies the world to such a degree that everybody and everything, their victims become symbols, objective symbols to be manipulated in various cruel ways, in inverted commas. But those cruel ways bring psychological catharsis to the serial killer, and therefore the serial killer doesn't feel that they have done anything particularly wrong, really. So that's a platitude, a sort of amorality, if you like, that comes out, and people discuss that ad nauseum. And then we need, this is no particular order, by the way, we need to give love to those who least deserve it. And we should not stand in judgment over people, because judging people doesn't help, they say. Interestingly enough, though, the word for prayer in the Judaic system means to stand in judgment before the Lord. So in actual fact, we don't deserve any love at all from God, and God is judging us for various sins that we're doing continuously and have done and will do, and particularly in regard to breaking Islamic Judaic law or Islamic law for that matter, and we are being judged. Our actions are being judged by a metaphysical, paranormal God, in that sense, and so therefore, you know, why should we give love to those who least deserve it if we are least deserving in it as well? It doesn't seem to make much sense there, really. If God judges us, then his priests, his children have the right to judge each other. That's what I'm saying. Everyone is doing the best with the tools they have, with what they have, and who they are. This actually would seem to me to suggest that there's no point in looking for self-improvement at all. The copper isn't going to turn in his badge. And he just, if you ask him what he's doing, he's just saying, I'm doing the best I can, given my circumstances and given the system that I'm working in. So, I'm obeying the law to the best of my ability, and I'm doing the best I can. And if I falter, again, don't judge me, because I'm only human. And only human could be another platitude. We are only human. Um, to change the world, you must change yourself first. I don't see why, really. I mean, Karl Marx didn't really change himself, and Rousseau either. And yet they began a philosophical economic revolution, a revolution in the history of ideas, which we're still seeing the implications of today. And yet, in their private lives, they were probably capitalistic, and authoritarian, and thoroughly unprincipled, especially Rousseau. So I'm not sure that one has to be a good person in order to administer the sacraments of liberty, light, and egalitarianism, and all that sort of thing. It's like the thing about the priest. The priest doesn't have to be a good person to actually administer the sacraments. They could be a pedophile, and the sacraments are not stained by the actions of the priest, which again is another sort of platitude that people come out with, and which you may not have heard before, but certainly if you think about it, that's true as well. Charity begins at home. Well, that may be true. Certainly, if you're kind to your own animals and children and family members and extended family members, and kindness and charity are cultivated within yourself and applied first to your own family, then I suppose that's a good place to start. But most people we could just finish there. But we talk about inclusiveness of moral action. So we start with the family, perhaps our own family and our own selves, and then we work out in a spiral way to include as many animals and people in the world as we can, in our charity and in our concern and in our practical measures that we're taking to improve the quality of life for animals and people. Another platitude here is that the instinct, this is Boris Johnson actually, the present Prime Minister of Great Britain. He said that the instinct for self-preservation is a noble one. So, for example, your family comes first. That's what he's saying. And you need to keep your income, your earnings back to help your own family first, before you think about helping other people's families, which is the conservative argument for low taxation, because people have a right to retain the money that they earn, and not be that concerned with the community, society at whole, or other people. So other people have to sink or swim, and why should you care about somebody 100 miles away from you that you don't even know? Why should you care about helping them, or even helping the community itself? But I suppose if you're helping the community, then you may be helping yourself as well. So that was Boris Johnson's sort of the nexus of conservative philosophy. And then, of course, the one that the media are very, very keen on: clean up your own act first before you persuade others to clean up theirs. Very often, the media will pick holes in people. For example, they'll talk about champagne socialists, basically socialists who theorize, but don't actually live in a council house on a minimum wage, and they don't actually cycle to work or cycle to the House of Commons. They drive in limos, just the same as all the other conservative politicians, and they're all a bunch of hypocrites. So the charge of hypocrisy is very much levelled against people, who are working class heroes, for example, which, as John Lennon said, is a very hard thing to be, because you are constantly, as soon as you come into money, then the media sort of point at you and say, well, you're no better than than the CEO of Facebook or something like that. You want money yourself, like you are a hypocrite. So these are the sort of platitudes which people come out with, and which people cultivate, and which people sort of trot out. And the world doesn't change. Animals, children, people are still suffering under capitalism, under exploitation, and nothing has changed. Nothing. The furniture is just rearranged on the Titanic, and still global warming continues. And nothing is being done about it. Well, not nothing, but not enough is being done about it. So in the face of this, people say, let's get rid of all these platitudes, and let us do something. Let us act, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita. Action. Krishna says, I am a god of action. And so we come to the various classes of action that we as individuals or as groups could take place. Put unethical businesses out of business, for example, by any means whatsoever. And be prepared to fight physically, to defend nature, to defend your local woodland, for example. You might actually have to go out and actually crack some heads, or blow up a few people with bombs, and so they actually go to war if all comes to all. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna doesn't want to fight his cousins and his teachers, but he has to. He has to do his svadharma. He has to do what is righteous, and indeed go to war, because everything has been done to prevent war, but war is upon us, so we must fight, because that's the sort of thing that has to be done. But against that, obviously, non-violent direct action. Political violence is limited in what it can do. And non-violent direct action is very, very good, especially for publicity stunts, and bringing people's awareness to the issues. And because it's non-violent, and may require a bit of self-sacrifice on the people doing the non-violent direct action, they may get their skulls cracked by police and all that. And people, it's martyrdom in that sense of the word. It actually gets you attention. But not the sort of murderous martyrdom of Al Qaeda, for example, but actual martyrdom, as in people willing to to risk pain and discomfort, just for themselves and not mete it out to other people. Let us say, very powerful, and a non-violent direct action is extremely powerful. Mock the mob. This is what people have accused Danny Shine of doing, of mocking the mob. He goes out and mocks people for shopping at Lidl and going into McDonald's and all that, and for being ridiculous consumerists and not knowing what they're buying and just buying what they want instead of what they need. So he goes out and he sort of has a mocking tone to his voice, as he satirizes people and makes fun of people, and questions people and challenges people, which most people find very unsettling, and they get very angry with him, which of course all feeds into his YouTube channel, and then you look like a complete twat. Excuse me, I shouldn't swear on this channel. You look like an idiot, as a result of interacting with Danny Shine, which is what he wants you to do. Anyway, so mocking the mob, something you can actually do. Intrusively convert everyone, regardless of who they are. You go up to them and say, you should believe in my religion. My religion is minimal living, veganism, antinatalism, meditation, and you should jolly well sign up here and start practicing this lifestyle because it's going to save the earth and save people and animals right now. And you're intrusive, all right. You don't care. You really don't care about people's sensibilities and upsetting people because the animals and children who are being upset now in the slaughterhouses and sweat houses of the world, they're very sorry about you being upset about their condition. But if they weren't in those terrible conditions, then they wouldn't be upset, and that would mean that people wouldn't be getting upset about their conditions, and so therefore they wouldn't be upsetting you, if you can follow all that. Make people make people frightened and make them greedy, yes. If you can persuade people that becoming vegan and living minimally is somehow going to be advantageous to them and their family, and even that they might gain something out of it, something for themselves, then you're appealing to their sort of greed and what's in it for me kind of attitude, which shouldn't be sort of, counted out. You should jolly well play on people's greed and also on their fear. So Project Fear comes into play here, and people say, what about massive tidal waves coming over my house if there's global warming, if I don't, insist on the cutting of the carbon footprint of my country and my community and myself, then I'm going to see this big wave coming over my family's house. I'm going to get a bit frightened about that. Well, I'm actually going to get a bit dead, and so I want to prevent that. So there's Project Fear, and sometimes you have to actually overstate the case with a degree of cynicism, I have to say, in order to get people to do things about something which is in fact real, although perhaps a little bit exaggerated, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so I hope I've showed that these platitudes exist, and against that, people feel that there's a sort of certain amount of hypocrisy and humbug attached to the list on the left here, the platitudinous list that I've mentioned here. And what we should be doing is going out and fighting and being active and being activists. And of course, there is this thing there that perhaps there's one platitude left, which does come from Lord Krishna himself. He said, well, fight if you have to, but fight with detachment, fight objectively. Don't fight with your passions and desires and with your angers. Just decide something needs doing, and then just do it with all the sort of with a bit of callousness actually in your heart, if in a way, or indifference certainly. There's sort of indifferent and indifferent to the results as well. Just act, and if you're acting in the name of the particular God, then the fruits of your actions will be in alignment with the universe, and the success, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, that your successes will prove your point, you see, will prove that you have acted righteously. So I've sort of kind of presented this as a discussion basis, really, or just food for thought for you to take away and think. And I suppose ultimately another platitude here, I suppose in a way it's sort of balancing action with non-action, and balancing wisdom with folly, if you like, in that sense. And action would be folly. Sometimes it is based on folly, and sometimes non-action is wise, and sometimes it's non-productive. So I'm just presenting the argument for you to consider.